So I've decided to come back and recreate the video that I made on this absolutely ridiculous and dangerous book on vitamin B12 by Anthea Hayes. This book should not be allowed on Amazon, and someone wrote in the comment section that it should be removed from Amazon, and I absolutely agree with that. But anyway, I I guess back in October I didn't make videos on this, but now I'm making another one because I need to go over this again because the vegans that are not taking their B12, they're being put at enormous risk by this lady through this ridiculous book. Okay, so let's get into the nonsense. This will probably be kind of a long video because I want to try to go through the entire book, which I know is a lot in this video, and show you, just give you an idea of the danger that is being pushed. I'll put some random video footage on the screen so that you have something to look at while we go through some of the nonsense in this book. So in chapter 1, she writes, "It's no surprise that the perceived necessity for B12 supplementation in a plant-based diet has given rise to claims that such a diet is not only unnatural, but unhealthy. Oddly enough, those spreading this misconception are not just rival industries or your typical adversaries aiming to malign veganism. They are every plant-based doctor or dietitian, every national vegan organization, and the majority of vegans themselves. Okay, what about all of the scientists that don't have anything to gain, that are reporting their findings? They've all linked hands and joined the ever widening circle of obstinate, die-hard believers convinced that B12 only exists in the flesh of non-human animals or in supplement jars. No one believes that. Also exists in nature. Anyway, this is like the very start of her book. This is how she starts it, with untrue claims. Then she writes in quotes, vitamin B12 deficiency, she quotes that like it's not real, is one of the most pervasive and popular accusations hurled at the plant-based diet, and it's meant to stump and stigmatize. It is a deeply embedded burr that cannot be plucked out simply by pretending it's doing no harm. Unfortunately, this ever-looming threat of deficiency has become the Achilles heel of veganism. She then says, naturally, this alleged unavailability of an essential vitamin really does lend itself to the idea that humans are actually obligate omnivores who require bits and pieces of animal parts on their plates, and this in turn has caused a burdensome weight to be placed around the neck of veganism, a prickly thorn in its side, a nail in its coffin. That's what she says. And yet, most vegans don't seem to mind or even notice the peculiar dichotomy that a diet generally deemed the healthiest for humans. There's no reference. Now, someone asked, does Anthea make any references for her claims? She absolutely does not. I don't really see anything referenced here, or any, because normally after a reference you would see like a small number or something that would lead to references at the end of the book, but there's nothing here. She just says that it's a diet generally deemed the healthiest for humans, and there's nothing, there to see. She just says that as a sentence, which is completely ridiculous. Just another lie. Something else that seems to be rather confusing in Anthea's book is that she cannot keep the story straight of whether or not B12 is a bacteria or B12 is a substance made by bacterias. But she wrote, but what if the real cause of so-called B12 deficiency symptoms was a failure of digestion and absorption of foods rather than the deficiency of a vitamin? What if the same sort of beneficial bacteria that only vitamin B12, she calls it a beneficial bacteria. The bacteria itself is not seen as beneficial. That is yet another claim that she makes without any backing it up. But she says, what if the same sort of beneficial bacteria that only vitamin B12 can allegedly provide, that the sentence right there is backwards. B12 is what's seen as beneficial, and it can only be provided by the bacteria. So I don't know what she means. Let me read the sentence again just to make sure. And what if the same sort of beneficial bacteria that only vitamin B12 can allegedly provide? So that's the way that that's phrased, makes it sound like B12 provides the bacteria rather than the bacteria provides the B12. Someone else let me know if that's how you're reading it. She said, what if it does actually exist in the intestines of humans, but is being destroyed by prescription antibiotics, antacids, and other bacteria decimating drugs? As we get through this book, Anthea seems to, on one hand, say that she doesn't believe cobalamin molecules exist at all, period. They're just not real. And then on the other hand, she seems to want to acknowledge, well, maybe we can get it from, naturally somehow. We just are destroying what if, what if, what if? A lot of what ifs. This book is intended to raise questions and doubt rather than prove anything solidly to these vegans, which is, someone wrote that believing in conspiracy theories is a sign of B12 deficiency. I don't know if that's true. No one ever said that B12 producing bacteria didn't exist in the guts of humans. It does exist in the guts of humans. It exists in the colon. It exists in the large intestine. So it's actually known that B12 is produced in the colon of humans. Can you see where the colon is? It's all green. Small amounts of B12 are produced there, but the part of your body that can absorb it is this duodenum in this area up here. But it's produced down here right before it comes out. Now, some of the primates that you all love to look up to, they will actually re-ingest that which comes out, and maybe they're getting some B12 that way. But yes, the colon does produce B12, so I don't know what she's talking about. It's probably just yet another lie in her book. The next thing Anthea does is write the burning question that all should be asking is, if the bacteria that produces vitamin B12 cannot be found in any plant form of a bacteria, and only exists in animal bodies or their secretions, edible insects like grasshoppers, beetles, or crickets, untreated water. I don't know why she put edible in quotes. I mean, other primates eat those things. Untreated water, sewage, sludge, or feces. Just where the heck are these supplement labs getting it from? Well, they isolated the bacteria and they're fermenting it. That's how they're getting it. It's very simple. This lady literally appears to have heavy botulism toxin and hyaluronic acid fillers in her face. She talks and her face does not move at all. It's made through the same process that those things are made from. They're fermenting bacteria, and the bacteria are producing the hyaluronic acid, and they're producing botulism toxin. It's not some big conspiracy and mystery. You're willing to go and get that stuff put into your face, but you're so concerned about taking a vitamin B12 that's made through essentially the same process. I hope that you can read this, even though I've had to cross some things out because I don't want YouTube to think that I'm promoting and pushing this. But you can see that she blatantly states what she states about it not being a vitamin, according to her. And I'm truly so sorry, y'all, that I will have to put her face back up here while we look at some of the things that she said in her book, because this man named Woodward, I think his name is, I'm looking at a different screen now, so I don't have his name in front of me, but he synthesized B12, and she's trying to discredit him because he also synthesized some other substances that were known to be toxic, also some beneficial ones like quinine and stuff like that, but she ignored that. She said in her book that colchicine was so lethal that it was removed from the market in its, I guess, an injectable form. Botox is a purified neurotoxin. And I'm using AI to help me to go through these points that she made. So I'm reading. They said, while colchicine, I think that's how it's pronounced, potential lethality is used here to condemn medical injections. Botox is also highly toxic in certain quantities and relies on the exact same principle of controlled therapeutic injection into the body. Okay. And then she also says strychnine is highly toxic, and she says that it produces dramatic and painful symptoms upon absorption. That argument against the toxicity of this medical compound is negated by the use of Botox because it is classified as a potent toxin that acts by causing localized, controlled paralysis. Then with Respirine, she says it can cause uncontrolled muscle movements and tremors, which is an unsettling adverse effect. Okay, and the mechanism of Botox is to induce muscle paralysis. That's also an unsettling effect, but some people want it because they don't want to have wrinkle formation. She believes that substances causing involuntary or problematic muscle effects are inherently bad, and then ignores that this cosmetic procedure purposely alters muscle function through paralysis. Interesting. Okay, and then she says the synthesis of cephalosporins, I guess he was also responsible for that. She says they were derived from mold found near a sewage outfall, and frames the source is not exactly an appetizing source for something slated to be a medicine. And she literally has something of bacterial origin. That Botox is produced through the laboratory cultivation of bacteria. She found bacterially derived medical substances to be unappetizing and not fit for human use, which does not align with the injection of substances into your face made through bacterial fermentation. Okay. Anyway, so she also criticizes medicine for its neurotic dependency upon doctors and the tendency to address disease by suppressing symptoms with medications rather than digging up the root cause. So yeah, she's if you're using Botox to suppress the physical symptom of aging and wrinkles rather than addressing any like root cause, like it could be your lack of collagen, it could be your lack of amino acids. But yeah, Botox is you're using something medical. You are. Her book is full of contradictions. And if you want to say maybe she doesn't have Botox, okay, maybe she doesn't have Botox, but when she talks, nothing moves but her mouth. That's all I'm saying. So it also wouldn't surprise me if this lady also has hyaluronic acid fillers in her face. I don't know why the video isn't playing, but as you can see, there's pretty much virtually no movement. No one in their 70s is going to have absolutely no volume loss under their eye area unless they are getting hyaluronic acid fillers. It's also likely this lady has had some type of a botched facelift or something like that. But yeah, same difference, same difference. They'll pick and choose what they want to believe in. Like Misfit Vegan, she doesn't believe in vitamins. She's the one in this video hosting this lady saying that, oh, you know, she doesn't like science. She doesn't like science. You know, they tested all this stuff on animals. Meanwhile, someone told me that Misfit Vegan recently got veneers in her teeth because she had, you know, eroding enamel and all that. But you believe in science for that. It's like they'll pick and choose what they want. Okay, the animals got to be set aside because I need this. You know, I need my hyaluronic acid and Botox. I need my veneers. And they probably tested all the stuff they use to numb you up and all that on animals first. That was a reason why Misfit Vegan here was saying that she didn't want to take B12 because they, you know, test all these things on animals. They tested your numbing agents on animals too before. They'll pick and choose what they want given what they need. At the end of the day, we're all selfish humans and we all want what we want. And we will use animals when it comes time to do that. You didn't care that their numbing agent was tested on animals, okay? But you want to judge people for not wanting neurological damage. There have been vegans out here that started getting neurological damage, that started taking B12 and felt better because they hadn't gone too far. But you want them to stop doing that and harm themselves neurologically. Meanwhile, you go and get your aesthetic fake teeth with numbing agents that were tested on animals before. We all pick and choose. You're not really a vegan, a human being, all animals, all living beings. We're all selfish and we all want what we want, need what we need. That lady can write an entire novel wanting other people to damage themselves neurologically while sitting there looking like I would not like to see this lady at night. I would never want to come across her ever, day or night, honestly. That's scary. But she gonna go and get her Botox while writing an entire book about how you should just risk neurological damage while she's getting botulism in her face? I'm sorry, what? Potentially? I'm not saying she does. I'm saying it seems like she does. Hypocrites. A lot. Okay? So anyway, back. And you know what? I had agreed to not have Anthea in thumbnails and not talk about her, but you know what? I'm just gonna have to revoke that because this book, it does literally need to be taken down off of Amazon. They're still pushing it, they're still peddling it, they're still promoting it. Misfit Vegan will not shut up about it. I could see if she had her little interview and it kind of just faded into the YouTube abyss, you know, of an old video, but she still keeps bringing it up. People are saying they're listening to the book. You just need to open up your eyes and see the face of this lady. They're all hypocritical. All of them are very, very hypocritical people. Okay. Maybe they don't even know what the author actually looks like. It doesn't look great, in my opinion. Okay. So I'm just scrolling through her book some more. Food fortification. Okay. Um, she brings up a lot of different things. She doesn't necessarily focus the entire book on B12 and trying to disprove that it exists. She tries to find the majority of the book, I would say, is not even about B12. I'm just scrolling through page after page after page of B12 and iodine. And she just doesn't focus on proving that B12 is not real and that it does not exist. And there's really a lot more that doesn't make any sense, but I'll see if I can, you know, provide screenshots. I don't know if I will be able to provide screenshots for everything just because I don't want to take forever editing this. But she initially calls B12 a false lab created substance, and then it's totally unnatural and altered. That's how she initially starts things in her books. But then later on, she's literally spending pages and pages and pages trying to prove that it does exist in nature, but it's in a plant. She says it's in a bacteria associated with legumes. Like, does it exist or does it not? If it's a false lab created substance, then why are you working so hard, page after page after page, trying to say that it's naturally occurring in legume root nodules? She never even says that it's in the legumes that are eaten. She says that it occurs on legume root nodules. Now, who's eating that? And because I don't want this video to be too long, there's still a lot left. I said I was gonna go through the entire book, but I don't want this video to be too long because they'll lose their the vegans will lose their attention span. But the last thing, which was one of the biggest bold-faced lies of the entire book, is that when she says it must also be noted that these rhizobium, and the rhizobium are the bacteria that she's saying are so wonderful because they're the OG bacteria that's attached to the roots of the legume plants. She calls them cyanobacteria. She says it must also be noted that these rhizobium are referred to as cyanobacteria. Again, no reference for that because she made it up. Rhizobium are not a cyanobacteria. She miscategorizes them, mislabels them. Rhizobium are a type of proteobacteria. They're called an alpha proteobacteria. They're called proteobacteria because they're gram negative. They dwell in the soil and they form a symbiotic relationship with legume roots to fix nitrogen. Cyanobacteria are a completely different type of bacteria. They're photosynthetic, meaning they create energy from sunlight. So they're not soil dwelling under the soil because they need sunlight so that they can produce chlorophyll. I think they produce chlorophyll because they have blue-green colors and they're aquatic. So rhizobium are not photosynthetic. Yeah, photosynthesis. They're making their energy from the sun. Rhizobium are not. They live underground and they depend on a plant for nutrients and not light because they're underground. So calling a rhizobium a cyanobacteria is just a massive fundamental error that she won't acknowledge, that the vegans won't acknowledge as well. This page right here is one of the more senseless, one of the worst pages in the book, actually. So she starts talking about the bacteria that's found in the roots of the legume plants, and she says, oh, they're nestled snugly within the roots of all legume plants. We'll get to the plagiarization part in a second, but she says that these rhizobium are referred to as cyanobacteria, which they are not. They're soil bacteria. She admits out of her own mouth that cyanobacteria are photosynthetic. How can they be photosynthetic when they're nestled snugly within the roots of plants? Where are they getting the light to perform photosynthesis? That literally just went and copied things out of a biology textbook just to fill her page, even though yet again it contradicts what she's talking about. So she says cyanobacteria form colonies in filaments, sheets, or spheres. Now, that's just to fill in the page. That's just to make her sound like she's scientific and she knows what she's talking about. But this entire thing is about the bacteria that's found in legume plants. They're not cyanobacteria. They don't form filaments, sheets, or spheres. I don't think she even knows what that even means. So I'm going to copy paste some images here just so that we can get an idea. She's the one that said the cyanobacteria form filaments, sheets, and spheres. One of the very few things that she says in her book that's actually true, but it contradicts what she says about the B12 bacteria in the roots of legumes. So these are filaments. They're linked chains of cells linked end to end. Sheets mean that they're two-dimensional planar colonies where the cells link in all lateral directions, and spheres, three-dimensional masses of cells linked in all directions. Now, what you can notice between all of these different types of cyanobacteria, link, link, link. They link together. They link together, either end to end or in a plane in all lateral directions. And the last one looks like it's still in all lateral directions, but forming a sphere type of shape. Link, link, link. And then we have the rhizobium bacteria, which are individualized bacteria. They live as discrete, independent single cells. Even when they cluster together, they don't form cellular connections. They're still all biologically individual. Now, please remember, just in case if you're a vegan and you forgot, she's the one that incorrectly categorized this legume root bacteria as cyanobacteria. She is the one that decided to go and copy paste from some biology book a list of um, the way that the colonies form of cyanobacteria that are not the way that rhizobium bacteria. Like I could see if they had at least one of these characteristics, but they don't. They don't form filaments, sheets, or spheres like I showed you. They don't link up together. They're individualized. So she doesn't even know what she's talking about yet. And let's actually explain why. Just because I just need you to absorb the stupidity of this lady and of this book, okay? She's the one that decided to say, "Oh yeah, there's this bacteria that lives in the roots of legume plants and maybe they produce some B12." Okay, that's fine. That's fine and well and fine. But she's the one that decided that she wanted to categorize them as cyanobacteria. She's the one that decided she wanted to list all of the characteristics of cyanobacteria that are incorrect. Okay, and why aren't these soil bacteria, why aren't they cyanobacteria? Why don't they stick together and form these filaments and sheets and spheres? Well, it's because the actual cyanobacteria, not rhizobium, the actual cyanobacteria, they have sticky cell walls, they stick together, and they do it mostly for light management and cooperation. They have to kind of stick together because they're photosynthetic and they like to maximize their surface area so they can capture a lot of sunlight and regulate gases across a large group. Okay, rhizobium do not do that. They actually have a little tail on them called a flagella, and they swim through the dirt to find a legume root. They don't stick to each other. If they were stuck in a filament or a sheet, they couldn't move independently to hunt for their host, and their host is the plant. Okay, they don't have a sticky glue that sticks them together because their survival depends on being mobile and flexible. Meanwhile, the cyanobacteria, their survival depends on them, kind of sticking together so that they can do their photosynthesis to their maximum capacity. She's the one that decided to make up this lie for absolutely no reason. So yeah, why don't she or Misfit Vegan address this? Maybe if you or Misfit Vegan can address this, or if you take down your book and decide, oh, I'm just going to take it down and edit all my lies. Maybe I'll take it down, but I want her to be in this thumbnail. I said I wasn't going to put her in the thumbnail anymore, but sorry, I guess I lied to whoever reached out to me. I don't care. I don't care at this point. She's lying to people and people are missing out on their B12 while literally seeing nonsense like this in her book. She categorized this legume root bacteria as a cyanobacteria. She just threw out some random biology facts. Oh, they form filaments and sheets and spheres. This literally doesn't do that. Did you even look at the bacteria? Do you see it has a tail on it? They don't stick together. They don't do photosynthesis. Are you okay? Yeah. Please don't listen to these spooky vegans, please, before you end up with neurological damage. This is probably what I would consider to be one of the worst pages in the book because it makes zero sense. But she says the prefix of cyano in cyanocobalamin was specifically chosen in order to give the illusion that it was of the same molecular structure as cyanobacteria. This entire page is just so literally utterly stupid. I hope I can keep straight everything that I need to say in order to discuss this. Cyanocobalamin was never meant to structure bacteria. It's like throughout this book, this lady acknowledges that bacteria produce this cobalamin molecule. Just because a bacteria produces a molecule, there's no way that anyone was ever thinking, oh, it has to resemble the structure of the bacteria itself, the molecular structure of the bacteria itself. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Also, she said they were referring to cyanide. Yeah, of course, of course. She's saying that it was plagiarized. That's what she says later on. I don't know if it's on the next page or this page. But let's get into why that can't be, okay? Vitamin B12 was first isolated in 1948. It was a massive breakthrough. I'm reading this from AI just in case, just so you know. It had nothing to do with cyanobacteria because scientists actually used bacteria from the genus Streptomyces, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, to produce it. They are categorized as actinobacteria. Those are soil-dwelling bacteria. They are completely different from the photosynthetic organisms that you're talking about. At the time in 1948, just so you remember, 1948, when they were using soil-dwelling bacteria called actinobacteria to make B12, what we now call cyanobacteria in 1948 were almost universally categorized as blue-green algae. They didn't even know it was a bacteria at the time. They just saw this blue-green stuff and they were calling it an algae. The word cyanobacteria did not even exist yet. Even if they were using that, at the same time, they were not even using that. They were using soil bacteria. Okay? They were a cyanophyta. Okay, that was a cyanobacteria. They weren't even considered a bacteria until 1977. In 1977, that's when the word cyanobacteria came to be the scientific standard, to call them a bacteria rather than an algae. And even with that, they weren't even using that type of bacteria. They didn't even know it was a bacteria that you can ferment and create anything out of. They weren't even using that. They were using a soil bacteria. So the timeline that she's made up makes absolutely no sense. Decades before the word cyanobacteria was even in common use, you're saying that they plagiarized it from a term that didn't even come into standard till 1977. They plagiarized it in 1948. And they weren't even using cyanobacteria for anything to create vitamins. They weren't even calling it cyanobacteria. This makes no sense whatsoever. I'm waiting for her to explain it. I'm waiting for Misfit Vegan to explain it. Maybe if Miss Anthea can explain this to me in a way that makes sense, or Misfit Vegan, who keeps pushing this book, maybe then I'll consider not talking about Anthea anymore and not putting her in my thumbnails and not talking about her appearance, where she's definitely gone overboard on things that are produced, in my opinion, by bacteria, facially speaking. I hope that I've made sense here because this is probably one of the worst pages in the entire book that I have to say that. And I know that Miss Vivi goes like, you just don't get it. You just didn't read it. I read the book. I'm pointing out these specific lines not lining up with chronological history. She said they specifically chose the prefix of cyano to give the illusion that it was of the same molecular structure as cyanobacteria that didn't even the word didn't exist yet. Explain it to us. And cyanobacteria were not used to make human vitamin B12 ever, even after this. So explain it to us. Thank you. Anyway, that's